Alright guys, I have some map ideas that I want to share with you. It's a lot to process. I don't have a whole lot of solutions, but I want to share some observations. The way that Up moves and plays makes it hard for other guilds to respond. And I'm going to explain that to you. So I made a comment the other day that Up looks like an octopus, okay? So just on a side note, these two on the left are mostly accurate. This one is actually accurate to the breakdown of the current map. This one is kind of a representation. This would be the bigger map with the X1 in the center. I didn't really spend that much time drawing the tiles to scale. It's not super important. I'm just going to use this as kind of a general movement idea. And then these 4 empty circles are also for general concepts. These are going to be more specific to the tiles that are actually, you know, if you really want to get accurate with which tile goes where. These are more for general movement. So I made a comment that Up looks like an octopus, right? And at first glance, I was seeing them control the center and then branching out. That's what I was seeing at a glance. But that's actually not how they move. Up anchors on edges and then moves into the center, which is actually pretty brilliant. Obviously you're getting more VP in the center, but from the center, I mean, this tile can be attacked or threatened from here, here, here into here, here, here into here, here into here. Like, yeah, you're getting the victory points, but that tile is constantly under attack versus setting up an anchor here, right? And being able to move here, 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 or here, 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 or here, 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 and no threats behind you. So for the purposes of this video, Up is pink. That's what we're used to seeing all over the map. We would be this silver color, but it doesn't really show up on our map. So I made Alcatraz silver and us orange just for this, just because the orange shows up a little bit better. So let me pause. I gotta collect my thoughts for what I want to say next. Okay, so kind of recollected my thoughts. I actually drew a mostly accurate representation of the map on this small tile as well. There's a temptation, Rec did it, and I see a lot of the top guilds do the same thing. There's a temptation to rush the center and then kind of blob out, right? And then move this way, which is why I said that Uprising looks like an octopus, because it appears that they control the center and then branch out. That's actually not how they move though. And the more I've watched the map, the more I can see how they actually move. And the way that they do it is actually pretty brilliant. If you blob out in the center, you're moving outwards with support on. You only ever have one tile to support. So if we start in this tile and move outward, we're attacking this tile with one tile to support it, and then we've also got to attack this tile with potentially one tile to support it, depending on the race. If we can solidify this in time, we would have 2, but pretty minimal. Versus if you picture the map as a straight line, and you cut that line first, do that first, every tile that you hit is going to have 2 support points on both sides. So instead of blobbing out in the center, Uprising actually cuts all the way across the map. Here's what I want to really emphasize to you guys. The strategic advantage here, this is looking at our actual map this season. The strategic advantage here is that Up has 1, 2, 3, 4. It's actually 5 that we would need to beat. This would put them on sector 31, right? And the way that C moved was 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Just hit this wall and kind of fan out. And that was our mistake, because as soon as they hit this, they've closed us off from the other side of the map. And so from here, this is Uprising's move. They start on, whatever edge they're on, pick the biggest opponent to cut off, and just run a straight line right down the map, right at opening, to close off Sea Raiders, which is the biggest threat. And they're gonna, at that point, if they have enough on, they'll start moving towards Armada as well, which is also a contender. But let's say this is, Joe Schmo's guild. That doesn't matter, okay? After they cut this line right down the middle, they're gonna use that tile to support this tile. And then that tile to support this tile. This tile to support that tile. Does that make sense? And then just creep into whatever the second strongest guild would be. And then once all these tiles are locked down, they'll go back in and backfill these other guys that have 10 fights on the first tile in front of them. Does that make sense? So instead of hitting the center and then fanning out, they cut a straight line. The way that we should have actually handled that, and this is true if you look at the map and actually count the tiles, they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which leaves one tile here. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 to catch that tile, and that tile is absolutely critical at opening, because from here, the only way that they can block us from the other half of the map is if they come over. This is 6 for them, okay, and then 7, but this is 5 for us. And now to block us, they need 8, but that's only 6 for us. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 would block us, right? So we're essentially a tile ahead every time. And once we get past this, this is a bottleneck. That's why they cut straight across the map, is because this other guild's HQ creates a pinch point where you can fortify here all you want, but you'll never be able to move through it. So as long as they hit that D4 ring right on top of another HQ, you can't get past them. Does that make sense? But from this point, in order to stop us, they're gonna need, so that's 7, 8, 9 to our 7. And we can keep doing that across the map, but every quadrant that we can move around them this way is essentially every quadrant gains 1 fight in a race, if that makes sense. So this is 5 fights to reach this tile. We can race them with 4. Does that make sense? So we're 1 tile ahead. In the next quadrant, they're going to need 10 fights to cut us off, but we only need 8 to get behind them. So we're 2 tiles ahead. And theoretically, I doubt they would let it go that far, but theoretically in the 4th quadrant, they would need 15 fights to close us off, but we'd only need 12 to get behind them. So we would be 3 tiles ahead. I doubt they would let it get that far. I'll come back to that idea. But this is the way that up moves. They cut straight down the map and then follow this 2 and 3 line against their strongest opponent, okay? And then once all this shit is locked down, they say, okay, we'll fill in this, we'll collect all that, grab that one, grab this, whatever, grab this. And so at a glance, this looks like an octopus, right? It looks like a lot of control in the center, but it doesn't start from the center. It starts edge to edge. Does that make sense? If they follow this line here, they're fighting on 2s and 3s to move to this point. Once they establish that control, so throughout the map after opening, they've got this, right? And then some control into our territory, right? Which is why they're incredibly hard to beat, because they have at least half the map, plus because these guys are not going to fight back. And if they do, it's going to be really slow. They're not ready. My phone died like 5 minutes ago, and I didn't realize that. So I've got to backtrack a little bit. I think where I left off is that they take control here. They start branching out. We're here, so they control at least half of the map. And they can backfill these areas later on. Because a lot of these smaller guilds are not going to be able to race up. They'll get like 70 tiles loaded out of 200 by the time that up is done with all these moves. Okay, so that's opening. But after opening, so 4 hours later, the way that up moves is not from the center and out. They move along these edges, and they'll cut through 2s and 3s, but land on a 4. Cut through 2s and 3s, land on a 4, cut through 2s and 3s, land on a 4. And then the very next round, and what made me recognize this is that at one point this season I was like, man, it's like fucking chasing them around the clock. You're not chasing them out of the center, you're literally chasing them around a clock, because the very next time that tile opens, even if you want to dig them out of this spot, they're going to start here and repeat that movement just on a different set of tiles, okay? And then, you know, this one, and then this one. Until after a full day, they're basically right back where they started. And that's why we can't dig them out of any quadrant, is because they're literally just rotating around the piece, right? And up is fast enough to, you know, so let's say we're making this movement, right? Up is fast enough to also attack the center as they make these moves, right? That's kind of a given. But omit that for a second. The thing that makes this movement work is not their speed per se. It's the fact that even if they were slower and they're making this move, as long as they do that, they can still hit the center from at least one area. Does that make sense? And they're fast enough to do it from 2 at the same time with extra support. Kudos to them. But either way, no matter where they land out here, they're always going to be able to hit the center somewhere. To be honest, I don't think the center should be our priority, and definitely not on the small map. This is the small map, so part of the challenge with the small map is that a lot of these tiles, this is true and accurate to our map. This tile covers 2, right? And then this tile covers 2 as well. So that's kind of how it filters out. Much better to hold 2 tiles on the outside than 1 tile on the inside. I understand that victory points would not favor us at that point, but in terms of actually controlling the map, because there comes a certain point where if you control everything on the border, you automatically control the center. Does that make sense? But focusing on the center just for the victory points means that you are constantly vulnerable from 2, 4, and then 6. So there's 6 plus 4 is 10, plus 2 is 12. 12 threats to each center tile, right? Depending on how they move. So to focus on the center and control that is, I mean, that would work against some B class guilds, but it's not going to work against Up, right? Up is controlling this, 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 and they'll take the center whenever they can because it's uncontested, essentially. Everyone is stuffed inside of their headquarters. Let me pause again. I'm going to collect my thoughts and set up my next little scenario. Alright, round 3. So, I don't have a whole lot of solutions. Mostly just sharing observations for you. I don't know if anyone has ever broken down their map this way, but that is how they move. And whoever is commanding it there, I'm guessing, is fucking tight-lipped. Probably not the kind of people that move to other guilds and share GBG strategy. You know what I mean? So everyone else is still in the Stone Ages with this rush the center and fucking blob out strategy, right? So from opening, Up is gonna try and make a pinch point. This is actually accurate. This is Up's location at start. This is section 31 at start, and this is us at start. Okay. Up is gonna try and create this pinch point right here, and if they can catch this tile, even though it's an edge tile, we are foolish to rush the center. What are we gonna gain in here? Can we I mean, seriously, count the tiles. 1, 2, 3, 4 to race up 2 tiles in. No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. 1, 2, 3. Okay. There's 4 for them. Can you see where I'm going with this? The best way to deal with Up, they're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We only need 4 to prevent this pinch point. They need 5, 6. We only need 5. They need 6, 7, 8. We only need 6. Does that make sense? So they'll hit this line. We'll deal with the center later. Otherwise, if we hit this off opening, we'll be struggling with this the entire season. Does that make sense? The best move is to cut them off everywhere around A3 until they get wise and realize that we realize what's going on, and they shut us down. Probably there. By the time they pick up on that, this would be a race, I would imagine. So, this is the big way they move. I don't really have a solution to that, because it does feel like chasing them around the clock. So from opening, they cut this, create a pinch point, bing, 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 okay, and then next round opens and it's bing, 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 and then the next round. I don't really have a solution to that, but I do want you guys to observe that and see the way that they're moving, because I do think that's accurate. The timer advantage is probably the solution to that. So if we can interrupt flow at key points on the board at different times and then set up our own move behind that, right? So this timer hold would anchor this point. This timer hold anchors this point. This timer hold anchors that point. Does that make sense? This would be our headquarters, but we could also anchor it with a timer hold. I think that's the only way to kind of reverse this flow on their movement. And like I said earlier, they're moving on A2 or 2 and 3 rows, and they're obviously have a presence in the center, right? Like, so when you look at the map, you see uprising in the center all the time. But they're anchoring those attacks from 2s and 3s. They're moving on 2s and 3s and anchoring on 4s every single time. So on the big map, the only difference is just the X1 in the very center with 6 two rank tiles, right? Instead of the 8 on the small map. But then on the bigger map, these tiles actually create more support points as you filter down, so one tile would potentially support 3 or be supported by 3, as it were, if that makes sense. But so the strategy is the same either way. They're moving corner to corner, 2 and 3 rank, anchoring on 4s. So even if you dig them out of this, finally, after 4 hours, if you finally dig them out, they're just going to shift over to the very next tile and then set up another move with the exact same pattern, just shifted by one tile, if that makes sense. Don't really have a solution besides the timer hold and anchoring behind it on 4s. That's really the only thing I'm coming up with, but I want to present to you guys the pattern that I'm seeing, and hopefully you smart fuckers can come up with a solution to it. Merry Christmas, you guys. Glad to be here. Bye.